You ever wonder how an AI can look at a really busy, complex scene and not just see, a bunch of pixels, but actually get the relationships between everything in it? Well, today we're going to break down this incredible technology called vision transformers. And trust me, it is completely changing how computers see our world. All right, so here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll look at the problem with the old way of doing things. Then we'll get into this really cool idea of attention. After that, we'll see how images get turned into little building blocks. And then the magic part, how those blocks talk to each other. Finally, we'll see what this all adds up to, a brand new way for computers to see. Okay, first things first, why did we even need a new way to do this? To really get vision transformers, we have to understand the problem they were designed to fix. All right, so take a look at this picture. For us, it's pretty simple, right? A bunch of birds flying in a blue sky. But for an AI, figuring out the relationships here, well, that's surprisingly tricky. Let me show you what I mean with a really simple question. So for us, that's a piece of cake. Our eyes just flick between that bird up top and the ones down below, and we know the answer instantly. But for older AI models, a question like this, where you have to compare two things that are far apart in the image, that's a huge challenge. For a long, long time, the go-to models for computer vision were called convolutional neural networks, or CNNs for short. And the way they work is by looking at an image through a tiny little window, processing small chunks at a time. Now, they're fantastic at spotting things like edges and textures, but they have this major limitation. It's like they have tunnel vision. And this right here shows you the problem perfectly. See, in a CNN, information can only move from one pixel to its immediate neighbors in the next step. So to connect that bird in the top corner to a bird in the bottom corner, you have to stack layer after layer after layer. It's just a really clunky and inefficient way to see the whole picture. So if tunnel vision is the big problem, what's the solution? Well, the breakthrough idea was actually inspired by something we all have, something that's ridiculously good at understanding what it sees, our own brains. Think about it. When you answered that bird question, you didn't scan every single pixel of the blue sky, right? Of course not. Your brain just zeroed in on the important stuff, the birds, to compare them. You paid attention. And that right there, that ability to focus on what matters, that's the secret sauce. This whole idea of attention is the heart of a type of AI called the transformer. Now, fun fact, it was first built for understanding language, figuring out how words in a sentence connect. But its core superpower, this attention mechanism, lets it connect the dots between any two pieces of data, no matter how far apart they are. Okay, so how do you take a model that was built for words and make it understand a picture? I mean, you can't just feed it a stream of pixels. The first thing you have to do is completely rethink how the computer even sees the image in the first place. So instead of seeing millions of tiny little pixels, transformers see something different. They see tokens. Just think of a token as a little bundle of information, a meaningful chunk of the image. That's way more than just one dot of color. And this whole process of turning a picture into tokens, it starts with a really simple first step. You just chop the image up into a grid of smaller squares, or patches. Then, each one of those little patches gets flattened. It's like taking that little square of pixels and just stretching it out into one long line. And that line of data gets turned into a special numerical code, a token, that the AI can actually work with. So the whole flow goes like this. You take one big image and you break it down into a whole sequence of these tokens. It's almost like the AI has turned the picture into a sentence, and each word in that sentence is one of the patches from the original image. Pretty cool, right? But hang on. This creates a new puzzle, doesn't it? If you just have a bag of these patches, you've lost all the information about where they came from. The model has no idea if a patch belongs in the top left or the bottom right. So, how does it keep track of the original layout? Well, the solution is a really clever trick called positional encoding. Basically, after a patch becomes a token, another little piece of data gets added on. And this extra data tells the model exactly where that patch was in the original picture, its X and Y coordinates. It's literally like giving every single patch its own little GPS tag. Okay, so let's recap. We have a string of tokens, each one is a piece of the image, and each one knows its original location. Now we're ready for the really cool part, the secret sauce that lets all these patches talk to each other. This communication all happens through something called self-attention. Now, the best way to get your head around this is to think of it like a super-powered database lookup. You have a query, that's what you're searching for. You compare that query to all the available keys. And when you find the right key, you grab the value that goes with it. Now, in a vision transformer, every single patch creates its own query key and value. The query is basically the patch asking a question. Hey, who else in this picture is relevant to me? The key is like an ID badge for every other patch, and the value is the actual stuff, the raw information inside that other patch. So what the model does is it takes the query from one patch, and it compares it to the key of every single other patch in the whole image. This creates a relevance score for every pair. And what this means is that a patch from the very top left corner can now talk directly to a patch in the bottom right corner. There are no middlemen. Every patch is basically asking that same question. So a patch that has a piece of a zebra's ear can now directly pay attention to another patch way over on the other side of the image that has a zebra's stripe. Why? Because the model figures out their features are related. Suddenly, distance just doesn't matter anymore. So when you put all these pieces together, the chopping into patches, the GPS tags, and its incredible self-attention mechanism, what you end up with is a fundamentally new and way more powerful way for computers to actually see. We've gone from the restrictive, inefficient tunnel vision of those old CNNs to something completely different. Vision transformers have global vision. They can look at the entire scene at once and figure out how every single piece relates to every other piece, building this incredibly rich, contextual map of the whole image. Look, this isn't just some minor technical update. This is a huge leap. We're teaching machines to see the world less like a grid of pixels and more like we do, as a web of relationships and context. And that unlocks a whole new level of AI understanding, which leaves us with a really big question. What happens when machines can finally see the big picture?